Good morning, Barb McQuade.
Good morning, Stephanie. Man, if I could get that introduction wherever I go, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
Like walk into a room at a party or something? That's amazing. Thank you.
I think into your law school class, into a courtroom.
Yeah.
It should be played on MSNBC. Now,
I think when I walk into the kitchen at my house.
Sure.
Now, you know that we all follow each other, me and you and your sisters-in-laws. We all adore each other. Joyce Vance, I know you probably saw that I liked her tweet in which she said roll tide. However, she was referring to something legally that happened that was good in Alabama. I just want you to know I'm not getting into the football thing at all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I did not endorse that as a football-related thing against your Wolverines.
All right.
Okay.
Fair enough. I appreciate that.
Okay. Stipulated. Sidebar. Okay, counselor, let's get on to the Supreme Court ruling. Is it a BFD as much as I think it is? Because we have talked over and over about delay. This has been the Trump template his entire life. But this time you're like, this is the end, right? This is the end. The Supreme Court 8-1 shot down this ridiculous claim.
Yeah, this is big. I don't know if it's the end, but it is absolutely big. So often the Supreme Court is about process, and even this decision is about process, but the substance of this decision is so meaningful. The court held that Trump does not have a right to block the request from the January 6th committee to produce these documents from the National Archives, and these are White House internal communications records. But if you look at the list of things that are included, we've talked in the media mostly about that these are records of the president's movements on January 6th, his phone calls, his briefings, his meetings, who came, who went, phone calls, and personal meetings. There's also some really good stuff in there. Proposed but rejected talking points for Kayleigh McEnany, for example. Handwritten notes with a draft of the president's speech that were drafted and rejected for the speech on the ellipse at the rally before the attack. A draft executive order on election integrity that was rejected. Like, how bad must this stuff be?
Yeah.
It's also records from Mark Meadows, from Stephen Miller, a proclamation about the death of the police officers on January 6th that was rejected. Like, what's in that?
Right.
So there's a lot of really good stuff here that I think the investigators are going to find very useful in terms of discerning what Trump's intent was that day, which is so important to any finding of, a corrupt effort to obstruct the official proceeding going on at the Capitol that day.
And Barb, I know I've heard, other legal experts say what was also interesting about it is they basically said, even if you were present now, we wouldn't have ruled in your favor. Explain that to us legally.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I think part of the argument was, it's Biden's, the issue is who gets to decide. And since Biden's the president, thank you for your input, Donald Trump, but it's Biden who gets to decide, and Biden says, I'm turning it over. What they said here is, going back to the Nixon case, that executive privilege is not an absolute privilege. It's a qualified privilege. And under some circumstances, it must yield, because the purpose of executive privilege is for the benefit of the country. Sometimes it's best to have candid conversations be confidential to promote frank discussions among staff. But then there's certain times when the overriding interest is so great that it must yield. And what the court said, this interest of finding out what happened on January 6th, and both of the courts below found that it was of overriding interest, that no matter who it is who's asserting the privilege here, it must yield under these circumstances. So that is also, I think, a significant part of this decision.
Is this going to impact, Barb, other people now? Meadows, whoever it is, Kevin McCarthy. I mean, it's interesting legal arguments I've heard talked about, like, for instance, that, this Giuliani, et cetera, all the lawyers subpoenas that I think it was Frank Filguzzi that said you don't subpoena attorneys unless they're part of the crime. So is that, crime fraud exemption, that they don't have attorney-client privilege because they're part of it? Sean Hannity, it's not about journalism or anything he said on air. It's that he's part of this and had knowledge of this conspiracy, right?
Right. So one of the reasons you want to get all of this information is that it will show what was happening in the White House that day, but it also can lead you to other witnesses and other documents. So oftentimes the documents you get make reference to other documents that can be smoking guns. Oftentimes they make reference to other people who were at meetings. And so it may be that you don't know who all was meeting with the president that day or had a voice in his ear. And then you find out from these records that call logs, who he was talking to, maybe he was talking to other members of Congress that we've heard about, Jim Jordan, and we've heard about Mark Meadows. Maybe there are others, Tommy Tuberville, maybe there were others, and that opens avenues. So anytime you get information like that, records are so important to an investigator because, people can shade the truth or have faulty memories or maybe didn't observe things properly in the first place. But documents don't lie. Sometimes you need people to help explain their context, but it's very difficult to get out from under what's on paper. And so those can be really useful in interviewing other witnesses because you can confront them with their own words. Look, it says right here in your email or your memo, your draft, let's steal the election or whatever it says. Yeah. And, it at least locks them into a story. And when you find conflicting stories among people, you can sometimes expose, lies or minimizing of someone's behavior or comment. So really important inflection point in this investigation, I think, to get these documents.
Now, you know me, I'm like a pig snuffling for truffles in terms of good news on the justice front. I will find it anywhere. But you seemed, for you, pretty happy clappy. You said filing seditious conspiracy charges takes guts. Well done, Merrick Garland. And, you've expressed impatience to some degree, as many of us have, with what's going on at DOJ. But you wrote a piece saying Oath Keepers' sedition indictments are just the beginning for the DOJ. It's not just about who's been charged, but who will be charged next. So you seem actually even a little bit surprised they went for seditious conspiracy as opposed to just obstruction of a official proceeding.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if surprised, but gratified, I suppose. It's a pretty significant charge. I've charged this offense before in 2010, and in a case that we lost. And so I have seen what an enormous charge this is because it brings not only a requirement to prove the elements of the offense, but I think it also is used only in those rare cases where there is an element of attacking the United States, the authority of the government, not just attacking police officers. I had a case 12 years ago, and there was this sense by the defense, the judge, the public, the press, that, oh, come on, these are just some goofy guys. I know they said they wanted to start a civil war, but we all know that that's just not possible. And I think there is still that reluctance to say, you really think they were attacking the United States? But I think in this case, the facts are stronger than my case in that they were at the seat of our federal government at the Capitol on a day that the certification was being voted on by Congress for the peaceful transfer of power. And so it's a really big charge. But what I like about the charge is I think it fits the crime, but it also opens the door, I think, to charging this. It takes guts, but once you've played this card, I think we could see it against others, anyone else who participated in this conspiracy. And that indictment, I'm sure you've read it, Stephanie. I don't know if all your listeners have, but it's a good read. It's 48 pages, and it's got incredible detail about text messages between the Oath Keepers that shows what their conspiracy was. That it wasn't isolated on January 6th. It began right after the election and leading up to it, and it continued after January 6th. They were going to continue to attack the inauguration. It was their goal to prevent Joe Biden from taking power, and they continue to amass weapons over this time. Many thousands of dollars worth of weapons. So it opens the door to some questions, I think. One is, who is funding this effort? All this travel and all of these weapons, including assault weapons.
A drone. How about yesterday? Right. A drone and 30 days of supplies, right? A cache of rifles, a quick reaction force set up at a hotel to ferry weapons into Washington. The cache became unnecessary, I guess, because they said they were able to get out inside the Capitol without additional support. They were prepared for a long haul fight. That's all pretty damning, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it leads to, opening the door. They're facing up to 20 years in prison for their cooperation. The only way for them to get out from under this, in the face of very strong evidence in their own text messages, is to share information. And they may have information about who was funding this effort and who else may have been involved and whether anyone else was organizing this or calling the shots. The other really interesting thing is there's a man in this group charged with seditious conspiracy named Roberto Minuto. And he is someone who has already been linked to Roger Stone. He provided security to Roger Stone on January 5th in Washington, D.C. So they know each other. And this man has now been charged with seditious conspiracy. Is that just a coincidence? Yeah. I'll tell you, if I were his lawyer, I'd be racing to get in to share what I know. And if I were the investigator, I'd be asking him about his relationship to Roger Stone. And was he the avenue to the Willard Hotel war room and others in Trump's inner circle? So some really interesting potential from that.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys that got pardoned, doesn't it just kill you on the justice front? Like, who is it? Bannon and Epstein now, who are both been subpoenaed by January 6th, are now selling some new cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
F Joe Biden
Yep.
something. It's their next scam that they're trying to con. After this fake build the wall that Bannon went to jail for, right, and then got pardoned. I mean, it's just, oh my God, this is the problem with evading justice, is they just keep doing it again. They just keep doing new scams, new coups, or ongoing coup, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, I think accountability is a really important part of moving forward from January 6th and the Trump administration. In addition to pardons for Bannon and Stone, Donald Trump also pardoned others who were convicted of public corruption, Rod Blagojevich, or commuted their sentences, the former mayor of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick, and others, members of Congress too, who were convicted of corruption. And I think it just sends this message that corruption's not a big deal, that everybody does it. And I think it undermines faith in our government and our ability to self-govern. And so I think accountability for all these people is so critically important, to say, integrity matters. We care about honest services of our elected officials, and we're not going to take it anymore, because otherwise, as you say, they're just going to continue to feed at the trough.
Yeah. Speaking of which, all the way to the Supreme Court, Barb, I'm sure you've seen on Twitter and elsewhere, a lot of people drawn to the Clarence Thomas was the only vote for Trump, and that his wife, the January 6th committee, would like to talk to, is possibly one of the funders. She just signed a letter saying the Capitol attackers have done nothing wrong. I mean, wouldn't that say he would at least have to recuse in anything related to January 6th?
Yeah, this is an interesting issue, Stephanie. I'm sure you've been following it. As of the moment, the Supreme Court gets to decide whenever they want whether to recuse themselves. It's true of all judges. They should recuse whenever their partiality could be questioned. So, for example, in the original Affordable Care Act case, Elena Kagan recused herself because she'd worked on the case as Solicitor General at the Department of Justice. And so she recused from that case. People should recuse when there is a fair question about your partiality. But because there's no mechanism for it, it's really up to them to decide when they will and when they won't. And so I think many people would have thought that Clarence Thomas should recuse, and he didn't. This was the subject of Chief Justice John Roberts' annual report to the public at the end of the year. Every year he does this little report, with statistics on what the courts are up to, which is very good, talking about issues. And he usually will raise some issue of concern that he wants to talk about. And this year his issue was, hey, I know people think that there should be more oversight of conflicts of interest for the court. And it includes also, by the way, sexual harassment in judges' chambers. I know that there are people who think that there should be some independent review of that, some check on that. But we don't think so. We think that would impair our independence. And so hands off, Congress, butt out, and we'll take care of it ourselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Other branches of government have checks on them. Even the judiciary has checks, right? The president appoints them. They have to be confirmed by the Senate, and they can be removed and impeached for misconduct. And so the idea that conflicts of interest and sexual harassment in their chambers can't be policed from the outside strikes me as tone deaf and wrongheaded, and I hope to be defeated at some point down the road.
Barb, quickly before we go, Tish James and the New York AG. Of course, Trump Organization responded by attacking her personally. Nothing about the substance of what's happened. But what's your take on what's happening there? To us lay people, it looks like such a clear case for years and years of insurance fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud, tax fraud, on and on. Where do you think that case is at?
Yeah, I think she absolutely has a right to subpoena and depose the Trumps, and I think she will. I think she'll get her information. I think I don't like the way she's gone about it. I think in her public remarks, I think she has opened the door to criticism by the Trumps and others that she is just after them personally for political gain. She campaigned on that, and she frequently talks about going after the Trumps. I'm sure it's true that many people feel in their gut that they're fraudsters, and we've read lots of things to make us believe that they're fraudsters. But when you're the Attorney General, I think it's important that you maintain impartiality and independence, and you don't taint the appearance that you have some sort of political motive. So I think if I were giving her advice about how to go about her work, I would say less in the public about what crooks these people are, and
All
just, file your legal process and get them. I think she will get it. I think it's appropriate for her to be aggressive in seeking this information. I think she will get it. And then if she can prove her case, then, we can talk about it then.
Okay. I would like to say impartially, they all belong under the prison. Okay. Also, my favorite thing you said is the Oath Keeper's indictment is an exciting read. You are such a nerd after my own heart. I can't believe it. You just like it's a Jackie Collins book. So exciting. The Oath Keeper's indictment. Nerd. We love you, Barb McQuade. Thanks so much. Come back anytime.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All
you
right.
bet. Thanks so much for having me.
Go Wolverines.